Ready? All right. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. I appreciate it. My name is Adam Rosenfeld. I am going to be giving a presentation on Operation Uphold Democracy. That was an operation that was taking place in the summer of 1994. There was a variety of different branches, but most primarily was the Army and the Navy working together the first time since World War II, and the first time ever with aviation and infantry. In September of 1991, the Haitian government, led by Jean-Bertrand Aristide, was overthrown by a military coup. There were three members of the coup: Army Chief of Staff Philippe Biambi, Chief of National Police Michael Francois, and led by General Raoul Cedrès. The funny thing about the coup was that Cedrès actually was assigned to oversee the election 8 months earlier that put the government in place that they were overthrown. Once it happened, crime in Haiti exploded. It was a drug trafficking haven as well. The worst part, and the one most documented, and what made the invasion or the operation, the humanitarian operation, was that the very people that took over the country were now the ones committing the crimes, most heinously to children and women, raped, killed in front of their families. It was really, really bad. The police and the general military in Haiti were the ones who committed it. The United States dispatched the USS Harlan County with 200 U.S. and Canadian engineers and military police on board to prepare for a return to Aristide's power. Unfortunately, General Cedrès had a mob waiting for them to port, and they decided to turn around. That excursion took place a week after the incident in Mogadishu with rain. So the government at that time was not interested in having more bloodshed shown on TV. So what they did instead, on July 31st, the United Nations Security Council passed UN SCR 940, the first resolution authorizing the use of force to restore democracy for a member nation. It provided for the reinstatement of the Aristide government and a 6-month mandate for the United Nations mission in Haiti. It would maintain order over the operation. The mandate was important because it also allowed for the United States to recruit Caribbean countries to provide their own military to sustain that security once the mission was accomplished.
Katie, thank you so much.
In September of 1994, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower debarked its Carrier Wing 3 at Norfolk, Virginia, and loaded 2,000 soldiers, 58 helicopters, the 10th Mountain Division, to take part in the operation in Haiti. This is the first joint operation since World War II, as I said, and the first one to include air warfare. And I was an engineer on board that ship for this mission. And it was quite a sight to see 1/3 of the entire 2,000 horse army on watch, 24 hours a day in the hangar. And it looked like a forest. It was all green back then. At the same time, like I said, 1/3 of the forces were there on standby. Meanwhile, as these forces prepared to invade, a diplomatic element formed by President Clinton and led by former President Jimmy Carter and U.S. Senator Sam Nunn and retired Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff General Colin Powell were sent to Haiti. The mission had no military escort and minimal security and was met with a lot of criticism for the risk of these well-known American diplomats. As well, 82nd Airborne was in the air for the invasion. So you get an idea of how close we were to actually putting boots on the ground. And having a former president, a former general, and a senator in the middle of not just a war zone where we're fighting the country, but the country's in turmoil to begin with. But believe it or not, the mission was a success. They were able to persuade the leaders of the coup to step down. Most importantly, Colin Powell was actually an instructor at the War College that General Cedrès had attended in the United States and was aware of who he was. They had a friendship, and that was instrumental in getting them to step down. Not to mention that there were close to 20,000 troops within the area, either air, sea, or land, from a variety of different countries. It was an overwhelming force to come against. The UN mandate, however, was very narrow in its scope. The force was to assist the Haitian government and not to run the country. This was a big problem because the prisons were emptied by the coup. They decided to let all the drug runners out, and once the invasion came, there was no government at all for a period of time, and even the people guarding the prison didn't feel like guarding them anymore. Having launched the operation, the the expectation of a forced entry assault, the forces conducting the operation displayed remarkable discipline and flexibility in adjusting to this new and uncertain environment. You had no idea when you were there who was the enemy, who was a criminal, who was your friend. Even the police for the last 3 years had been the ones committing most of the crime. So how do you decide who is going to be in charge of administering the law and who's going to be the recipient of the law being brought upon them? It was a major problem because of how narrow the scope of the mandate. As well, we had just learned a whole bunch of lessons from Serbia and from Mogadishu. The incidents that happened, chronicled in Black Hawk Down, in large part were caused by a lack of understanding of local culture and understanding of the forces that you were fighting. I'm going to quote Walter Clark and Jeffrey Herbst in a paper that they wrote shortly after the invasion. This arduous mission, regarding Mogadishu, I'm sorry, this arduous mission brought many critical UN administrative weaknesses to the surface, and the UN forces were unable to recover from the precipitous American withdrawal from Mogadishu. To do better, Americans and others need a much clearer idea of what humanitarian intervention entails and how they are realistically going to achieve their goals. Achieving international agreement on the appropriate methods and force structures to accomplish meaningful humanitarian intervention will be difficult, but the payoff could save countless lives. The Operation Uphold Democracy was the enactment of this very quote. When they saw what happened in Somalia, they realized as bad as everything is in the country that you want to go help, you have to understand that you can't allow your force, which is there to protect the humanitarian element, to be led over into actually engaging in what's going on in the country. Haiti, there was not a single American life lost to combat. There were a few accidents while you were there. When you have that many pieces of equipment in that small space, bad things can happen. But as far as actual combat casualties, zero on the American side and very, very few on the Haitian side. Most of the incidents that they had were caused by Haitian locals themselves. Once the mission was completed, in October of 1994, President Clinton signed an executive order reducing all of the emergency restrictions against Haiti. All the embargoes were reduced to nothing, and diplomatic relations were established again with the country. And it's marked as a success, not only because the mission was accomplished, but because it was a very, very short turnaround from the lessons learned that caused the mission to be a success. And it demonstrated not only to the military for themselves, but to the American people that a joint operation was something that was capable and showed the flexibility of not only the Army, but the Navy, as well as the Coast Guard and diplomatic relations with the Caribbean countries to bring about this type of evolution in a very, very short period of time. And I appreciate your time. Do you have any questions for me about this operation?
The operation that happened in Haiti, is that when Baby Doc was forced out of office?
Sort of. The election that Jean Aristide won was the first freely held election in Haiti. He replaced Baby Doc, but there was some time before that. It wasn't directly taking over. While there was some chaos between there, there was a time where there was a kind of impromptu government, but he was the first freely elected president, so he kind of replaced him. But he really kind of took over where there was chaos. He was actually a clergyman, and that was what helped him to be able to gain the trust of the country. The governments in Haiti have been corrupt for decades, and he was he was the first person that people of Haiti really believed when he said that he wanted to improve the country, that he was going to do it legitimately and without the backs of the Haitian people paying the price for it. Thank you. Great question. Anybody else? Any other questions? No? Well, this concludes my brief. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'm grateful for your audience. Thank you.